Hi everyone. Really quick before we start today, I'd like to say thank you to 10.9 LLC, a shooting supply company who has agreed to try out a part-time sponsorship for the show. As part of this, they're offering a special deal on their website exclusively for the listeners of Ryan's Shooting Podcast, which will be available for this week only, which is free shipping within the United States on all match pellets and cleaning supplies, aside from H&N economy pellets, that are sold on the 10.9 website. So to take advantage of this, go to 10.9.com, that is 10pt9.com, and enter the coupon code SHIP4FREE, with no spaces, to receive your free shipping upon checkout. Also, be sure to check out next week's episode to see any new offers that might become available. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hello, listeners of Ryan's Shooting Podcast. Hope you all had a nice weekend. So, about a week and a half ago, many of you, myself included, participated in what is probably the most well-attended air rifle match in the United States of the year, and that is the USA Shooting Winter Air Gun Championships out at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado. I think that from an organizational standpoint, especially considering how many people were invited this year or involved, and the fact that they had to set up a whole additional range in the gym next door to the shooting building, I think it went as smoothly as anyone could have hoped, and I just want to say a quick thank you to those who helped run the match and the many volunteers who showed up and made it possible for us all to compete. Anyway, now that I know a lot of you probably shot the match, this episode is going to kind of make use of that as a teaching opportunity. Even if you didn't compete last week, though, you'll still be able to get quite a lot out of it, so don't be running off thinking that what I'm going to say isn't going to apply to you, because it will. Now, for those of you who did shoot it, I imagine this was probably a goal match for you, being that it is such a big competition, and especially since this year, it also served as part one of the U.S. Olympic team trials, of course. Now, hopefully, going into this match, you had all listened to my first few podcasts and had learned how to set up training plans and prepare yourselves appropriately to be able to perform your best at a goal match. If you haven't listened to those, I suggest you do, because they offer some good ideas for how to systematically develop skills over the long and short term to most effectively prepare for a big goal match like this was. Now, however, the match is over, so what do? Well, today we're going to learn about how to evaluate our performance and use it to make us better shooters than we were before the match. As we all know, shooting a competition, especially a bigger competition like Winter Air Gun or maybe a Junior Olympic qualifying match, which I know are also going on this time of year, those put us in a different environment than what we're used to in practice. So don't be too surprised or upset if something may have happened that you didn't expect to happen, or maybe if your performance was worse than it normally is, or even if it was better than it normally is in practice. All of these things can be explained by this change in our physical and mental environment while we're shooting in a competition. I'll give you a couple examples from my own shooting that you may or may not find interesting or amusing concerning this. So, here's an example of something that happened to me in a match that I had no reason to expect. I didn't plan for. During one of my first overseas trips as a member of the U.S. junior team, I was over in Pilsen, Czech Republic for this pretty big international junior competition, and I was shooting air rifle. Halfway through my match, I picked up a gun, aimed at the target, pulled the trigger, and pop! I fired my gun without having loaded a pellet. Of course, I then raised my hand and informed the range officer, because it's the sportsman-like thing to do, to fess up when you do stuff like that, and you accept the fact that it counts as a miss and the 10 points off your score, even when it's a big match, which for me at this time, it certainly was. So, how could that possibly have happened? I kind of asked myself after the match. I can't think of one time I've ever done that in practice. How could I just forget to load my gun before shooting it? So I started to think about it and try to find reasons for how this could have happened, and here's what I came up with. I'd been shooting a lot of scat leading up to the match, and I had been dry firing a lot while doing the scat training. So, in between each shot, I would just bring the lever back, cock the spring, and close it right back up again. So that physical pattern became a little bit more of a habit than usual. But still, I'd never done that before in my live fire practice. Why would it happen in the match? Well, because I was at this big match, I was a little more on edge and pushing my comfort zone a little bit. Also, as it happens, I'd shot a 9 on the shot before that, and I let it bother me just a little bit, but enough to slightly throw me out of my rhythm of load, shoot, put the gun down, load again, and I skipped the load again step. I let the match pressure kind of get me out of rhythm over a 9, and that caused me to inadvertently revert to another physical pattern that I'd replicated a lot in my training in a scenario where I shouldn't have replicated it here in this competition. And I ended up with a miss because I didn't load a pellet. So there's a perfect example of things can happen in a match that you might not have ever considered happening before the competition. So you're not the only one if you've ever had something bad happen to you in a match. On the other side of the coin, you may also surprise yourself with what you can accomplish under match pressure. Different people respond differently to different amounts of pressure when they compete, but for myself, a lot of the time I find that I shoot better match scores than I do in practice. Shooters normally worry about how match pressure is going to cause them to falter and do worse than they normally do in practice, which is, of course, a possibility, and you see it happen all the time when you go to competitions, but it can also work the other way around. For example, 2 years ago in this match, Winter Air Gun, I showed up pretty late. Not to my relay, but to the match. So I was going to school up in Alaska at the time, and because of my class schedule or tests or something, I couldn't fly out and get down to Colorado until the night before the first day of competition. So there I was on the line in the morning, tired, jet lagged, dehydrated, just not in optimal condition to perform very well. But as it turns out, one of the days I shot a 627.7, which was my highest match score ever at that point. And then the next day I came in and I shot a 628. And frustratingly, I still haven't been able to beat either of those since then, but it just goes to show that a little bit of extra stress, match pressure, can sometimes provide the little push you need to bring out the best of what you can give. I just want to take a quick break here, halfway through the show, to remind everyone once again of the opportunity being offered by 10.9 this week, which is free shipping for all match pellets and cleaning equipment on their website, aside from H&N economy pellets. If you use the Ryan's Shooting Podcast exclusive coupon code SHIP4FREE, you can take advantage of this offer. Please go out and make use of this great discount, because otherwise 10.9 isn't going to know if this sponsorship is worth doing, and having the show sponsored is really a great way for me to be able to keep making these episodes available as a free resource to help you all improve, and that's really what this show is all about. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the show. So, in evaluating your own performance from a match, the first thing you want to do is look at your goals that you set up before the match. What did you go to that competition to do and accomplish, and what did you actually do and accomplish? Did you want to shoot a certain score, or did you want to execute a certain skill perfectly, or did you just want to have good time management? What is it that you specifically set out to do at this competition, and did you achieve it? If the answer is yes, I did, then excellent. If it's anything other than that, then let's start trying to figure out why that is. Could it be as simple as having set your goal too high and having it at a level that's really just impossible for you to achieve at your current skill level? If so, then the next time you may just need to reevaluate your goals and still keep them challenging, but at the same time reachable. Could the reason you didn't reach your goal be equipment related? Could you have used the wrong ammo, or did something on your gun break while you were flying out to the match, or did you have to change some settings drastically when you went through equipment control and you didn't have enough time to get used to those changes? If so, these are all pretty easy fixes. They either require just, some new ammo testing or having your gun serviced and get some seals and things replaced in there, or shooting more practice with the new changes you had to make to your equipment so that you're more used to it. And for next time, preemptively checking to make sure all of your stuff is legal before getting to the match, rather than the day before the first competition day in the equipment control line. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that if you struggle to reach your match goals, that you also may have been pushing it on the time and getting extra stress over that time management. If that's the case, do you regularly train under time constraints so that you're more used to it? Or are you being overly picky about your shots? By the way, see last week's episode on shot rejection for more info on this particular topic. But if time was an issue, then there could be multiple reasons for why it was a problem, and you'll have to think about what it might be for this particular competition and then come up with a way to fix it for next time. It could be as easy as training more under time constraints, or it could be something like having a more detailed match plan, knowing when your breaks are going to be, how many shots you want to have done by how long, just things like that. Finally, one of the biggest reasons people might struggle in a competition or higher stress competitive situation is because they haven't mastered the mental game. And trust me, we're going to go into a lot of depth on this topic coming up, especially in January. But a quick rundown right now. Basically, the mental game can be broken down into three major parts, and that has to do with your confidence, your thoughts, and then your ingrained skills or abilities. You may have heard these three things termed the self-image, the conscious mind, and the subconscious mind if you've done any kind of reading or research on your own on this subject. But anyway, there will be an in-depth episode on each of those three sections in January, but for now, the fastest and easiest thing concerning the mental game that you can fix has to do with your thoughts or your conscious mind, specifically relating to your emotions. Emotions and emotional control play a huge role in how you perform. The whole next show I'm going to do actually is focus just on emotions and the role they play and how to manage them. But for now, the best thing you can do is try to eliminate them entirely while you are shooting. They are in no way helpful, they can only hurt you, and you can control them more than you may think. And like I said, we'll be going into this in much more detail next week. So, after evaluating how you did on reaching your match goals, start to look more at the smaller things. Let's go back to my example from earlier about shooting a shot without a pellet and getting a miss. What can I take away from that, and how can I change my behavior so that it doesn't happen again in another competition? Well, I've already identified what might have caused the problem, and that's practicing scat with a lot of dry firing, and also letting a 9 get into my head just a little bit, but enough to throw me off and allow me to revert to another process that I had ingrained in my subconscious. So the easiest thing I could do to fix that, or that I could determine, was to change the way I trained with scat. Rather than dry firing all the time while using it, I would load a pellet and shoot into a pellet trap every time, if possible. I wouldn't look at the actual monitor to see where the actual pellet landed because that's not the point of my training. And I would still only look at the scat computer trace, but I would still be maintaining that step of loading in my shot process so that if I get to a match and my mind is behaving just a little differently than normal, I don't have a chance to revert back to the pattern of not loading because I haven't been practicing that during my training anymore. So this is what I still do, as a matter of fact. When I shoot scat, if it's possible, I always shoot live shots. And like I said, I still won't look at the actual target monitor, just the scat computer, but I will still be including that loading step in my shot process. Now, this is going to sound, it sounds like something that's extremely elementary. However, under match stress, you have to understand that your mind will behave just a little differently than it does under non-stress practice sessions. So you have to, number one, practice regularly under some kind of stress, and number two, prepare ahead of time for things that could possibly happen to you that you wouldn't expect. The other thing I learned from this experience of shooting a dry shot in my match was that while I thought I was pretty cool-headed during competitions, it turns out I wasn't cool-headed enough. I got thrown just a little bit by seeing a 9 as a shot result, but it was enough to end up costing me 10 points, a final, and a medal by messing up a tiny basic part of my shot process for one shot. Again, we're going to be talking about emotions and emotional control in depth in the next episode, but the main takeaway here is that even if you think you're cool, chances are you can be even cooler. You should try to be ice cold emotionally while you're on the line, where nothing's going to faze you. Anyway, so I hope this all gives you a good starting point into how to evaluate your match performances. The things that you can learn the most from are how you shoot at matches, what goes right and what goes wrong, and then addressing those things in your training so that each match you can overcome a new hurdle. There's always going to be things to improve, but you have to be conscious of what those things are and then implement them into your training plan after every competition. Now, once again, I just want to thank 10.9 for agreeing to try out sponsoring the show for this month and offering a great deal on equipment for the listeners of the show. Remember, the coupon code is SHIP4FREE with no spaces, and it will get you free shipping within the USA on all pellets and cleaning equipment on the 10.9 website this week, aside from H&N economy pellets. So please, if you get a chance, head over to 10.9.com and check them out. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you're able to learn something useful today. Have a fantastic week.